Sponsor an orphan, and you'll help support a vulnerable child to have the education they've always dreamed of, so they can build a brighter future. You'll be feeding a hungry stomach and a hungry mind with knowledge that will last them a lifetime. That's the power of an education. Sponsor an orphan now with Islamic Relief.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. This is your main man, the host with the most, Preacher Moss. Hope you're doing well here on a Tuesday. I am in Chocolate City, Washington, D.C., just broadcasting in my favorite room, my mom's house, where we get these shows done. This is my location from the location when I'm not on the location, if you will. That's a little bit of a tongue twister. Listen, yesterday I got a really, really interesting email when we were talking about the whole idea. And I just want to address this really quickly. The whole idea of the art of being thankful. And someone asked me about the whole aspect of being able to accept your station. What I meant by that is, you're going to be put in situations. This is a religious, spiritual, but you all going to have a station in life, whereby it's a position you may or may not be aware of or conscious of, but in that space, there's interconnectivity. And to reiterate, that whole thing of being thankful is a bit of a precedent. It lets you know that somebody showed you some type of generosity, somebody showed you some type of mercy, somebody made a decision in your behalf, whether it be big or small, just like the videos, a small decision, a big decision. But the point of the matter is, it's part of a continuum. And these decisions, I believe personally, are the things that keep the balance in the world. The crazy stuff that we see is probably just a small percentage of what's really going on in the world. But it's highlighted, and in the journalism business, they said if it bleeds, it leads. And we do have a culture where if it bleeds, it leads. And it keeps us in a space where, unfortunately, if you're not careful, you can kind of grow into these little circles of being very, very, very hopeless, amoral, if you will, whereby these things that you're seeing don't register on your heart. So I just want people to know that the whole idea of having a station is a really, really important aspect of the art of being thankful, which means that you have to really, really be in the present to totally understand and appreciate what's going on. All right. Enough of that. So here we are today on Tuesday, brothers and sisters. I have been holding this topic today, addressing issues between Black and immigrant Muslims. Now, this is not a situation whereby anybody's being dragged across the coals, but I believe that the relationship between African American Muslims and immigrant Muslims here in the United States really, really, really needs to be redressed. When I say redress, it's because I've gone to other countries and looked at the relationship of immigrant Muslims around the United States. Now you have two setups. One is a Muslim country, and you have another situation where you have immigrants from other countries go to places like the UK, go to places like Canada, and things like that. In the United States, though, the flavor is different. The texture and the tone are different. When I go overseas, people really, really welcome African American Muslims. They're aware of our history. They're aware of our stature. They know from pillar to post. They know about the Marcus Garvey, and you know about Marcus Garvey because Marcus Garvey was Jamaican. So you have that piece, and the Mohammedan movement within the Marcus Garvey movement and the Lost Foundation. And what you see is that people are very, very astute in terms of how people use Islam to free them, to liberate them, to give them, I would like to say, a new purpose away from being oppressed. And I think this is the thing we really need to talk about because here in the United States, I personally feel that, we've overlooked a lot of things. And not to lay blame on anybody, but I think there's been some oversight whereby we have, in some regards, let folks off the hook. And let people really, for lack of a better word, kind of dictate what the relationship is between African American Muslims and immigrant Muslims. There are a lot of things that I can go into, probably a lot of things that you can go into historically, what those narratives are, but the idea in America that there has to be a certain type of tone for leadership for the Muslim community is something that's been plaguing us for quite a long time. And I think today, I just want to get into it. I'm not going to give it, I'm not going to give you a dissertation. All right. I'm not going to give you a dissertation, but I am going to lay out a little bit of an argument of what happens when immigrant Muslims come to the United States and kind of encounter African American Muslims that are already here. So get your notebook, get your paper. This is going to be one of those shows. Let's get it started, everybody. This is Preacher Moss on S.O.S. Let's rock. All right, and we're back. Before we get started, I want to give some shout out and love to our shout out show family, shout out show soldiers who are in the box. They are the mighty shout out show family, brothers and sisters. Let's get them in. Sister Ree, assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sister Ree, I texted you. I don't know if you got it, but give me a holler when you get a chance. Need a favor. Peace and blessings to you and Derek and brother Juwan. I haven't heard from him. How is Juwan doing? Let us know how Juwan is doing. I always mention him, but I haven't seen the young man in quite a long time, and I know he's doing great things. He's a nurse, brothers and sisters, and he was on the front line during COVID, and he put in that work. So shout out to you, Juwan. All right, next up. Altaf Rashid, my main man, I call him Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down. He is the Canadian ambassador to the S.O.S. The Shout Out Show. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for coming to the show. Appreciate you as always. Your presence is not overlooked. It is definitely appreciated. And we make that mark every day, as well as for everybody else. Next up, brother Mark Candidate. What's going on, Ak? How you feeling? I think we still have some feedback, Satana. Feedback. Okay, we're good. All right. So while looking at Salon for Tula Barakata, brother Mark, how you doing, Ak? Hopefully while I'm here we can grab some lunch or something like that. I'm doing some shooting on a documentary. So let's try and connect someplace. When the shooting is done, let's go grab some salad or something real healthy that I really don't want to do. Okay. I like to hang out with you. I'm not necessarily in a healthy space. Actually, I went to my first Sweet Greens restaurant. I went to Sweet Green, and if there was a type of uh, uh, disappointment that people saw when I walked into Sweet Greens, it was there. They were like, "Oh, he does not come here often." In fact, once I made my salad, I had to whisper to the lady, "Do you have any drinks in here that have sugar?" She was like, "No." But they do a wonderful salad. Shout out to Sweet Green, great salads. All right, Mark, we're gonna catch up. Next up, my little brother Johnny L. Thomas, my main man. What's going on, Ock? Peace and blessings to you and the family, Yolanda, Justin, Jordan, Miss Thomas, Miss Maisie, Vivian, Eunice, the whole crew. Peace and blessings to Mr. Johnny L. Thomas Sr. May Allah be pleased with him. Hey, man, good to see you on the show. Thanks again for the support. Next up, Bilal Salahuddin. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To both of you and your queen. I don't know if y'all in the same room or in different rooms, but I got you covered, brother. Duas going this way and that way, but they wind up right here for you. And appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for tuning in, my brother. Much love. Next up, and we got sister. What's her name? What's her name? Oh, I'm just kidding. Sister Todd on the ones and twos, making this whole thing happen today, making sure my hands are free. Because most of the time on Monday and Wednesdays, I have my hands all down here and stuff. It's like an anti-Busta Rhymes song. Keep your hands where eyes can see. I'm like, no, if it won't work, I got to put them down here. So shout out to Sister Satana, who's gonna come here and recite Arabic for 30 minutes on one of the shows. In fact, it's gonna be a Saturday spotlight. She's just gonna recite. She's in a program called Be a Hafiz in 3 weeks, and she's gonna come on and bless us with the hafizity. If you Satana's like, shut up. Hey, Satana, thank you so much for joining the show. When you're not here on Monday and Wednesdays, we miss you, but we appreciate you when you're here on Tuesday and Thursdays. All right, let's get to our topic. Addressing issues between Black and immigrant Muslims. This is where this comes from, brothers and sisters. We are on the cusp of having ISNA, Islamic Society in North America's conference, coming back to Chicago. And it hasn't been in Chicago for about 2.5 years due to COVID. We haven't had I don't think we've had a conference with the WD Muhammad community for Satana. Have we had one lately? I think we haven't we've done some virtual stuff, but we haven't had like conferences. One of the issues that always plague, virtual, thank you. One of the issues that's always plagued this conference is the history of the actual conference. For quite a number of years, most of you guys know that the Savior's Day and things like that had a foothold in Chicago. They were in Chicago, Detroit every once in a while, but the WD Muhammad convention was always Labor Day, and it was in Chicago. And they lost the date. Let's just be honest, they lost the date. And it was no longer in Chicago. It was way out in some suburb, Harvey, Illinois. It's not even Chicago, brothers and sisters. And I remember performing at ISNA, and someone said, can you please come do the joint in Harvey? And I remember driving through a pouring rain. I'm like, oh my God, where is this place? Because I was like, it's in Chicago. And I'm like, it's not in Chicago. And I was like really, really disappointed. And one of the pioneers sat me down because it was on my face. Because when I got there, it was like, nobody wants to come out here. Nobody wants to come all the way to Chicago. And then you got to drive to Harvard. Nobody wants to do that. And my issue wasn't with it's not having a conference in Chicago. My issue was, why don't we have our conference in Chicago? And the issue was, in almost a will of good act of goodwill and graciousness, we yielded the Chicago space so that ISNA could be there. And ISNA would say, well, we're going to do a big one and you can come. It never really worked out like that. It never really worked out like that. Now, let me preface this by saying, before I go any further, that when I decided to become Muslim, I'm going to be very, very honest with you. My affinity and my goal and my intention was to join the Nation of Islam for a plethora of reasons. Back in the 80s, in the early 80s, Public Enemy, we would come out of the crack wars. The impetus of saving Black community and Black intellect was hugely important. And the voice that we heard largely from a youth movement was the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, speaking in a tone that called in the logic of a Malcolm, called in the logic of Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And it was strategic. Nobody had pictures of Imam Wardine Muhammad on their t-shirts. If you wanted his tapes, they had tapes. They didn't have CDs. And he was a part of a movement that was a lot more comprehensive, a lot more strategic, but it was newer. If I'm saying, brothers and sisters, that I'm taking my Shahada in the 80s, in the late 80s, then Islam in the African American movement, in terms of moving to a Sunni thing, is in its infancy. And we are counting on pioneers who are making the transition. And I've said this, that the whole idea of Black Islamic theological output is pretty tremendous. in that amount of years. That we can have imams that are well sourced in Quran, Sunnah, Hadith, all these things. That we have pockets of people who take young folks over, young African Americans in particular, over to the Middle East, Saudi, Syria, spots like to learn how to be Hafiz. That's great. That being said, though, we don't work together well. And I'm going to say it again. That being said, we don't work together well. And I've tried to navigate this for quite a long time. And I realized, talking to Dr. Sherman Jackson, actually talking to Minister Akbar Muhammad one time, that the scope of African American Muslims and immigrant Muslims in terms of theoretical Islamic prose is built on the fact that we come from two traumatized societies. I'm not saying we're all traumatized. I said we're coming from traumatic situations. And let me stick a pin in that. Just because you come from a traumatic situation doesn't mean that you're going to be traumatized the rest of your life. You can learn from a traumatic situation. In fact, you can excel and you can expand, you can express yourself beyond traumatic situations. But when this scope is focused on Islam in America, you can't overlook the fact that for the African American who finds this religion in concert with the other religions, let me put that out, in concert with the other religions, that the Christian ideological drama, or not drama, but dogma, is interesting because Islam is the first thing that people migrate to and talk about en masse in a noticeable. And the interesting part is, if you look at slavery and the preservation of Islam and the growth of Islam, the interesting thing is in the African American community, despite all that trauma, there's a vestige that allows people to have love. Islam is practiced with love. Does that make sense? That in the African American community, whether it be in the nation, whether it be in the W.D. Muhammad community, even some of the Ahmadiyas, even some of the Salafi, that there's a space in there that Islam only works because there's love. And we can have all the differences that we want to, but it's built upon love. And that love is the thing that drives us. The interesting thing is, now I look at my immigrant brothers and sisters who came here and are still coming, because we're looking at Afghanistan and da-da-da. You know, the interesting part is they are coming from traumatic situations too. And that traumatic situation does not yield the fact that they're necessarily coming here to establish religion. They're not coming here to establish religion. They are coming here to get away from oppression. And in coming to get away from oppression, yes, your religion can bolster you, but you're going to walk into a different situation of how people use religion to grow themselves, to liberate themselves. For African American, the religion is the thing that creates a scenario whereby you create a bubble within a bubble, if that makes sense. When I say create a bubble within a bubble, it's like you may have racism for Black women, you may have sexism, but you have this religion thing that somehow gives you space, it gives you leverage, it gives you levity to kind of go ahead and deal with all of this stuff. And the difference I've learned with Black and immigrant Muslims, and it's changing. Let me say this now. It's changing because when some immigrant brothers and sisters came over here, they were escaping that trauma, but they didn't really fully understand the trauma that was going on. That the fight was real. See, when you fight in the country, I can't really frame this. Like, if you're fighting in a country for your rights and the people that you're fighting look like you, it's different. Like in India, I've done some fundraisers for, they're Indian Muslims that are being persecuted by Hindu Muslims. And this is all based on religion. But you go to Saudi and you see what Saudis are against Saudis and things like, and you read about this. This is the Osama bin Laden stuff that you read about. But the African American looks at a premonition. They look at a premonition, and here's the beautiful part about it. You look at a premonition and you say that this thing that I'm going to use right now is something that can't be usurped by the government. The white supremacy can't have it, and it's scary. It's literally scary. If I weren't African American, if I was a white supremacist, I'd be afraid of a black man or a black woman who actively searches out God to deal with their problems. This would be Christian, it'd be a black Christian, black Jew, black, somebody who takes the scope out of an oppressor's hand and goes, we're not going to do this. We are going to create. Earlier, I did the show, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was right. I did that show, and I sent it out to some of the people who are in the nation, and they have very interesting comments. I said, because people then began to look at what's being bought into. And one of the big things, and I have to say this, one of the big things that's always been divisive between African American Muslims and immigrant Muslims is the fact that to integrate into society, religion was used. Wasn't shared. It was used. And in that used space, there was usury. And there are people to this day who have bad feelings about how the religion was brought upon them, that they were preyed upon, that the love of this religion was somehow manipulated, that the love of this religion was somehow disrespected, that when you see somebody, and everybody knows this feeling, that when you see somebody who's Muslim and you go, man, you automatically are thinking they got a love of Allah like I got a love of Allah. And it doesn't happen. That time reveals that, and this is, nobody take this wrong. Nobody take this wrong. But if you're in a Muslim country and your religion is Islam and you claim to be Muslim, why are you leaving? Why are you taking off? Why do you feel the need to? You shouldn't worry about. You should be so happy in a Muslim country. You should be improving and establishing that religion is established in your country. So when you come here, there is resentment because people going, well, if it was so great, if it was so important, then why didn't it work? Everybody knows here. Everybody on this platform knows. The majority of poor countries in the world are Muslim countries. Muslim countries led by Muslims, populated by Muslims, they are amongst the poorest in the world. We spend billions of dollars sending it overseas to support Muslim countries. If you look in the converse, how many people sent money over to support African American Muslims? All right, marinate on that. We'll be right back here on the Shout Out Show. Hey, babies. Welcome to Radio WCUC, Convenient Urgent Care, home of the smart patient. This is DJ What It Do. You know what time it is. It's the top of the hour, and the request lines are open. You know what you want to hear. I know what you want to hear. Operators are waiting.
I just got to hear Don't Get the COVID.
Don't get the COVID, put your mask back on. The Delta COVID, more contagious than before. Don't get the COVID, go on and get the vaccine. You know that it can keep you safe, and your people living up in your space. Don't get the COVID, you need that it can keep you from dying. Don't leave your family all alone and crying. Don't get the COVID.
We invite you to join our fight against COVID and against misinformation. It's time to listen to the doctors and trust the science.
When I think of people dying that don't have to die, it makes me sad. Now's the time to be sober. Together we can make this thing over. Let's fight the COVID. Convenient urgent care, home of the smart patient.
All right, we're back. Shout out to brother Eric Carter who joined us. Assalamu alaikum assalam rahmatullahi barakatuh. What's going on, E? Thank you so much for joining. I want to stay on this point, man, because I just laid out some issues, some of the issues between Black and immigrant Muslims. But I want to also say that it's changing. And two of the reasons that it's changing, number one, is the dynamic of African-American Muslims in America is changing. There is a movement whereby a lot of NOI brothers are understanding that we have to work together. So there's a push to understand and probably at some point in time move over into the space of being Sunni Muslims. That's number one. Number two is there's a new generation, not a new generation, but a younger generation of immigrant Muslims who were born here who do take time to look at the history. I want to say the history and, for lack of a better word, the chain of command of how Islam was introduced to African Americans and how it stuck. And they have to ask questions, literally, because the roots aren't that deep. The roots are not that deep. Immigrant Muslims in America, the roots are not that deep in terms of how you deal with this system. Issues in terms of jobs and identity politics are relatively new. They have a new television show on Disney Plus. I haven't seen it. Miss Marvel. It features a Muslim female character. She's the lead character. She's a superhero, and props to everybody that's involved. But I remember reading, and everybody was saying how they were emotional because they saw a brown person on TV, and this is some of my children, and da da da. And I'm like, we did this. We did this, and we did it on the force of the fact that we believed in who we were. See, we have BET and we have TV One and we have Tyler Perry and we have folks like that. And it's easy to overlook them because we really understood our image. What we haven't done as African-American Muslims is put out that kind of product where we do own our content. We have our own studios. And I'm going to encourage that we do that because it's it's the next step. I mean, hell, Al Qaeda has a studio. Why can't we have one? Right? So let me wrap up because I don't want to be going over. But I want to make sure that, this is probably going to have to be a part 2. That we begin the very, very painful process and potentially productive process of talking about how we get together and have meaningful growth, not discussion, meaningful growth and development together. We have the knowledge and the experience, and over here we have knowledge and we have resources, whereby we're not competing for the same little breadcrumbs. We're talking about developing a whole new loaf. Think about that. This is Preacher Moss on the Shout Out Show. This was addressing issues between Black and immigrant Muslims. I'm feeling that we're going to be back on this topic soon, but until then, you guys take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. See you soon.